Hey, this is Kenny Aronoff, right here from my studio in Los Angeles, Uncommon Studios, LA, and you're listening to me on Talking Blues.
So you just had a gig with the Kings of Chaos.
Well, I had a gig with Kings of Chaos, the Bodines, and John Fogerty.
Wow.
And I did a speaking event, my first in-person corporate speaking event, and all this happened all within like 3 weeks. So it's nonstop, and the preparation for every one of these things is massive for me. I'm a very, very anal, hard worker, that crosses the T's, dots the I's. It doesn't matter that I played with John Fogerty for 27 years. To prepare for one show takes 3-4 days.
Is that what is the preparation? Is it the musical preparation? Is it a physical preparation? Is it a mental preparation? Is it all of the above?
It's all the above. But the most important thing is that we're human beings. We're not robots. I may have played Fortunate Son, 8,000 times, but that doesn't mean you can play it after you haven't played with John Fogerty for 13 months, that you can just get back into it. So it's the repetition. It's going over everything, physical, mental, and emotional, and technical, that you need to do to play at the level that I'm expected to play at. And it's just simply repetition. I have this thing called RPS, which is the repetition of any skill is the preparation for success. That's why Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls. Tom Brady is always thinking about winning a game, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's a lifestyle. So when I prepare, yes, I pull the music out. I have technique exercises I do anyway every day. But then I even will practice the count off if I have to count off. I go through every single thing so that when I get to the situation, not only do I feel confident, but people can feel it and smell it. It inspires the rest of the people around me.
When do you know that when you feel confident?
Well, I'm pretty confident 24 hours a day at this point.
Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, I was, when I was 18, the day I graduated high school, I started practicing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, because there was no school of rock when I was a kid. So I was going to study classical music. In my family, we all went to college. So the only programs that were around in the USA were, if probably the world, because rock and roll was so new, was either be a jazz major or a classical major. I chose classical because I had started studying with the percussionists from the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and that type of instruction was, there's no entitlement, there's no laziness, there's no hand holding, there's no trophies just because you show up. If you aren't prepared, you get your ass kicked, and that's what I learned from that type of teacher. And also, I was a 3 letterman jock. By the time I was 16 years old, I was on 3 varsity sports in high school. So my skills of understanding discipline, self-discipline, hard work, and perseverance, and no hand holding, and just you're on your own. And it's, you want it, you go after it. If you don't want it, then somebody's going to take your place. Those skills I learned by the time I was 18. And so I didn't need someone to tell me to practice 8 hours a day. I did it because I knew I was behind, and the thought of failure was just unacceptable for me. And I'm still that guy. It's like, to be successful is one thing. To stay successful is much, much harder. And for me, I'm not like, I'm talented, but I mean, I could name off 100, 500 great drummers that are amazing. But I'm just trying to be the best that I am. I'm trying to be the best Kenny Aronoff I can be in this life. And it's, and so I'm really competing with myself. And because I'm human, it's like you're just not going to be always where you want to be. I have a saying, it's called, I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be. And that's like a running back in football. They don't get touchdowns every time. The most massive, most physical, most, rehearsed and prepared athletes, but they don't get touchdowns every time. They stay focused on their entire career to get in the end zone. It's a mental thing. And that's the way I look at myself. Is if things don't necessarily come as fast as you want, if you really want it, you stay on it. And I understand the method now. I understand. Just hang in there and keep putting in the time. Keep working, keep doing it. If you have a bad show, there's a reason. You just calmly figure out what you need to do, to make the next show better. And it's that simple. There's no shortcuts. No shortcuts.
At what point did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
Age 10, I saw the Beatles on TV. I was playing outside, and there was nothing to watch on TV when I was a kid. So we were always playing outside, and my mom yelled at us to come into the family room. We thought we were in trouble. And when I got there, she was pointing to a black and white RCA TV set, with the rabbit ears to get, it was the antenna
Right.
to get reception. And there's four guys on TV, and they're in suits, and they look cool as hell. And they got guitars and bass, and there's Ringo Starr was on the drum set way up on a high riser, and they had long hair and they looked cool, and they broke into "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah" on the Ed Sullivan Show. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I want to do this. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know where they're from. I'd heard rock and roll, but I'd never seen it. And I'm like, it was at that very second I knew that I wanted to be part of a group of people, a team of musicians that would do that, that would record music, perform music, collaboration, creativity. I didn't know these words. And I think at that moment, I realized what my purpose in life was, what my bliss was, what my passion, what my deepest desires were, what my truth was, before I even knew what those words meant. But it hit me deep in my heart. And I asked my mom, who are these guys? And she said, they're the Beatles. And I went, well, I want to be in the Beatles. So call them up. And I want a drum set. Fuck the piano lessons. I'm playing drums now. Well, she didn't get me a drum set, and she didn't call up the Beatles, obviously. So I was very bummed out. I was like, I don't know what to do. There was nobody to tell me. There was nobody teaching rock and roll. How does a 10-year-old kid really get his dream to come true? So my parents saw that I was really, really crazy about rock and roll. So they got me a snare drum and a cymbal, and I started my own band called the Alley Cats, and we taught ourselves how to play our instruments, and we started playing Beatles music. But the great ending of this story, or a great milestone on this story, is 50 years later, when I'm an established session touring drummer. I get a call from Don Was, producer, musical director, to do a CBS special called "The Night That Changed America," honoring the Beatles for that Ed Sullivan Show 50 years later. Now I get to be part of that. Not only am I the drummer in the house band, but two of the musicians I played with was Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. So it's kind of like a Cinderella story, dreams come true kind of thing. But what happened in between, I made it happen. And many decisions I made were based on that original realizing your purpose. For example, so I mean, all through grade school, from 10 years old playing with the Alley Cats until I graduated high school, I played in bands. We had a barn on our property. We just played in bands. And what else? I didn't know what else to do. I was in a town of 3,000 people. So when it was time to go to college, I got into an okay college, but for 1 year. But then I transferred to the number one school of music for classical music, Indiana University School of Music in Bloomington, Indiana. Spent 4 years there. Auditioned, got into the Aspen School of Music for a summer program run by Juilliard, which is the number two school in the country. And I spent 4 consecutive years auditioning for a summer program at Tanglewood run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And I failed 3 times. And I went back a fourth time, and I got in. 7 percussionists in the whole world. That's it. And I got to work with Leonard Bernstein, one of the greatest conductors, composers in America. Also, Aaron Copland, Seiji Ozawa, the Japanese conductor from San Francisco Symphony Orchestra and Boston Symphony Orchestra, and Arthur Fiedler. And I mean, I had worked my way from the bottom to the top. and I get into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra.
The fact that you tried for Tanglewood 4 times, tell me about the way you handled the rejections the first 3 times. I mean, was there ever a doubt that you would ever get to Tanglewood?
Oh yeah.
Like in your mind, it didn't matter.
No, I was devastated. I was embarrassed. I was hurt. I felt like a loser, but I had a very very competitive edge in me, and I was not going to give up. And it was so frustrating because, and I could have prepared better. I think the first time I did, I just went for it, and I mean I got crushed. And I came back the next year and was more prepared, but I still could have prepared better. But eventually, I got in because I just got better and better. That's an example of how if it's the RPS method. If you repeat a skill over and over again, you will eventually become successful. Yeah, I was very disappointed and embarrassed, but I was driven to succeed. And I think some of that comes from your DNA, the way you're born, and some of it comes from your upbringing, or a lot of it comes from your upbringing. My entire life, I never ever once ever thought that anybody was going to take care of me. I mean, I knew my parents were there for me, but I never was ever thinking, well, I can just get by. Never. I've always thought I was on my own. And that's what I've told my son. I said, you got two things I'm going to give, bits of advice I'm going to give you. Always realize you're on your own. Don't depend on anybody, even though obviously, if my sons need some help, I'm there for him. But I want you to think in terms of you are on your own. Don't depend on the government. Don't depend on people to hand you stuff. You make your career, you make your life. The other bit of advice I tell them is be healthy because you're on your own. If you have that attitude, you won't be waiting and looking for handouts. You're going for it. Look at nobody's born successful. Nobody. Bill Gates wasn't born successful. Elon Musk wasn't born successful. He was just a baby. Those guys made their success. Nobody handed them. They didn't hand them that success. They made it happen. The guy who, Bezos for Amazon, they made their success. Those are examples and role models. Obama, wasn't born the president. He made decisions that got him there. So for people to think that success just lands in your lap or it's going to be handed to you, it's guys like me that are going to take it right from you because you're waiting for something to happen, and I'm always taking action.
Well, what I find interesting about your career is there are a number of times when you faced failure,
Oh yeah,
where things didn't go right, and the way you reacted to that, as in the case of you auditioning for Tanglewood 4 times, but also when John Mellencamp
yeah,
first went into the studio and you were told that you weren't going to be recording the first album with him.
yeah,
At that point, you could have been totally pissed off, walked away, but you
yeah.
said, "I want to stay and I want to watch what I need to know so that I can do it the next time," which was like, to me, that was like an amazing point in your life.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on. All I know is I was embarrassed. I felt like a loser. I was ashamed. I was going, don't you realize I worked with Leonard Bernstein? That didn't have anything to do with getting a song on the radio to be a number one hit single. In other words, I might have been experienced at playing classical music, but I wasn't experienced getting songs on the radio be number one hits. That was a pivotal moment in my life. That was a life changing moment. There was because based on my purpose, seeing the Beatles at 10, when John Mellencamp, I turned down the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. I turned it down. I turned certainty down for uncertainty. I turned certainty
Sorry,
down.
can I ask you why? Because you'd spent,
I'm getting
but
there. Yeah,
okay.
because I followed my heart and not my head. Thank God. I wasn't having this conversation we're having right now when I was a kid. I just turned it down and I felt like, wow, what am I doing? My parents are going to be pissed. Everybody was shocked. I was turning down a paycheck, a gig, all that work I'd done for 5 years, and now I'm turning it down because I followed my heart, because I still wanted to be in a rock band. So I made that decision. And when Mellencamp told me to go home, I said no, for the same reason. He was trying to take away. I finally was in a rock band. I was finally in a band, going to make records, going to be on MTV, going to be on tour. I finally had, in my mind, gotten into the Beatles in a smaller scale. And then he tells me you're not playing on the record? No fucking way. And that's so I was freaking, but I told him I'm not going home. And he was like pretty like he could that'd be like a boss telling you you're fired and you go, no, I'm not. And then the boss says,
Keep showing up.
what don't you understand about that you're fired? And I said, well, I'm not going home. And so I negotiated a deal that on the fly that was I was trying to negotiate a deal that would benefit the both of us. And basically, I said, well, am I still the drummer in your band? And he looked at me and he went, well, yeah, but you're not playing on the record. And I said, well, I'm going to go, and I'm fumbling for ideas. I'm going to go in the studio and watch these drummers play my drum parts on your record. And I'll learn from that and I'll benefit from that. And you'll benefit because I'm your drummer. And he didn't say anything. Silence. I'm like, oh my God. Well, I went, well, okay, I'll work for free and I'll sleep on the couch. I'm not going home. And he went, okay. So I stayed there. And the big takeaway, the huge lesson, and this is what makes a difference in many ways between a successful person and a not a successful person. And this is what I talk about in my speeches. Very, very important concept. It's a shift from me, you're the individual, to we, the team. See, I spent all those years focusing on me. Practice, sound, feel. Everything was about me, which was what I needed to do to be great as an individual. But to be really great, to always work, is you have to be the ultimate team player. You have to know how to be part of an epic team, which is all about not you. It's, in other words, if I was to start a business with you or be in a band with you, the approach I need to take is I want you to like me. I want to like you. I want you to do great. And I want you to like me and I want you to wish I do great. So that together we co-elevate. We co-elevate together. That's why teams win Super Bowls. Teams win World Series. Teams win Stanley Cups. Teams win, NBA titles. Not individuals. It's a team. And those great coaches really, really teach these people about that. You take all these super talented people and create a team. But you want to be the MVP on your team as a team player for the team. So in other words, if I go in and do a session and I'm playing on a session, say with Mick Jagger, man, it's not good enough that I do a great job. It's not. I need the bass player to do a great job, the keyboard player, guitar player, everybody, the engineer, everybody do a great job. So that song is phenomenal. It gets on the record, gets on the radio. If my drum part's great, not good enough. And if I'm satisfied with just my part and don't give a shit about everybody else, I'm not a good team player. That's the thing I learned.
How much studio work had you done before that opportunity with Mellencamp, that first album?
Not much. Nothing at that level, that's for sure.
Okay, so when he said, okay, you can stay and watch and sleep on the couch, what
Yeah.
did you learn from that? Because it's weird to think that, your first opportunity, one of your earlier opportunities to go in the studio, and that they tell you you're not good enough, to where you are today, which is one of the most sought after drummer.
It wasn't that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't experienced enough.
Okay. What did you see at that session that thought, oh, I need to do that?
Well, besides the technical stuff, there was a whole list of technical stuff. But this teamwork thing was what I learned. I learned I have to serve the song, serve the artist, serve the band, serve the producer, serve everybody. It's all about the team. That's what I learned. And I didn't know how to put it in words like that. But as I step back and look back, that's how I became successful. Because when I walk into a studio, whether it's Elton John or Springsteen or Sting or the Smashing Pumpkins or Tony Iommi or Alice Cooper or Avril Lavigne or Lady Gaga, whoever it is, I go right up to them and I start connecting with them, start communicating with them. So we have some sort of rapport. Now we can collaborate, connect, communicate, collaborate. This is not about me as much as it's about us. That's what I learned. That's what I learned.
But when do you think you became this entity? Because now, I presume, and for many years, people call you because of who you are and the reputation that you have and the type of music you play,
Hmm.
the type of drummer you are. At what point did you define that? What point did that become you?
Well, I became me when, as soon as Jack and Diane went to number one, 2 years later, after I had failed, all I knew is when I went home, I went, whoa, I've got to change my entire business model. In other words, I started at that moment becoming a different drummer. Still me, but I mean, it was like, what does John Mellencamp need? Not what do I want to do? What does he need from a drummer? That's a team. That's about the team. What does he do that I need to do? So I started listening to the Rolling Stones, Creedence Clearwater, Bad Company, AC/DC, music where the drummers play simpler, clever, feel, time, even simple John Bonham, like on Kashmir, Phil Rudd on Back in Black. Listening to songs where drummers are part of the package, the team, doing their part to serve the song. Not about them, it's about we. And so I started to realize that was a very humbling moment. As a matter of fact, I even said to myself and to somebody, because I was reminded this, that I actually said to somebody, I got to learn to love this or I'm not going to be good at it. I have to learn to play simple. I have to learn to serve this music. And if that doesn't make me happy, I won't be great at it. And so there was a pivotal moment 2 years later. When I went home after that being fired from the record, I said, I'm going to make a promise and a commitment. I'm going to be on the next record to redeem myself. And that was 2 years later, still in the band. And go down to Criteria Studios. It was one of the most difficult records I've ever made. John Mellencamp almost died right in front of me on a motorcycle accident at 80 miles an hour. Where dog jumped out in front of his Harley in the dark, and we saw sparks flying and the bike going down the pavement, and it hit a tree and explode. We thought he was dead, but he had jumped off at the right moment. He'd gone, that was a week before recording. He was going through a divorce and he was about to lose his record deal. He was not a happy guy, which made the sessions very difficult because he was expecting so much from us because he needed us to, he walked into a rehearsal once years later and went, listen, you guys, I write the same songs. I need you guys to come up with creative, innovative parts that get these songs on the radio to be number one hits. And Kenny, if somebody has a better drum beat than what you're playing, you play it. Nobody owns their instruments here. We all own each other's instruments. I need ideas. I need songs to be hits. And he left the room, and I thought he was a jerk, but he was right. He was right. His delivery wasn't great, but he was right. This is about getting hits. This is about how do we get this song on the radio to be a hit. When you do, you win the Super Bowl. Everybody gets a ring. It's not about just me coming up with the drum parts. It's about we coming up with great parts to make songs hits. That was huge lesson that I learned. That became me a great session player years later. And I walked in the studio, and that's where the whole Jack and Diane thing happened. I mean, I see the co-producer with this metal box, and I go, "What's that, Don?" He says, "It's a Lin 1 drum machine." And I'm going, "What? Drum machines replace drummers?" And I'm freaking out. This is 1981. This was like, so I get into that fight or fight mode like I did when John Mellencamp tried to send me home. I call it adapt or die. Adapt or die. I grab the machine, grab the manual, I program the drum, the part of the beginning of Jack and Diane. And I give the machine back, and I'm reflecting in the lounge. Oh my God! I mean, what's going on? Am I is drummers the horse and buggy, and the car just showed up and it's replacing them? I mean, what's going on? And so John eventually calls me into the control room and says, we need a drum thing here, a drum part, a drum solo. And I was scared shitless because I figured, man, I got to save this song to save my career. And thank God, but I was excited because I was on the song. Thank God we spent all day getting drum sounds because that entire time I had learned my lesson. I went, what can I play that will make this guy's song sound great on the radio. What style of music? Well, how? What do I need to do? And obviously, I was thinking less is more, simple and powerful. And when I made my entrance, it was like boom, kabam, boom, blam, with the kick drum, bass drum, and snare. Boo, 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 God, dude, that's the machine. Do God, do, boom, blam. And I stopped and I looked in the control room and they were all going thumbs up. So now I knew I still had my job. Bottom line is, I started trying different ideas and I hit a brick wall. I get called into the control room and I've got half the people telling me what to play, half the people telling me what not to play. And that's where I had that epiphany in my head going like, dude, you're on your own here, buddy. You have to figure out what you're going to do to save your career. And I started heading out to the drums. And I remember going 50 feet, man. This is it, dude. This is the World Series. You're up to bat. You either win the World Series or you lose it. I'm 40 feet away from the drums. I'm going, what are you going to play? 30 feet. I don't know. 20 feet. Dude, this is it. What are you going to play? 10 feet. I don't know. I get to the drum set and I'm looking at the drums. I'm looking at them and I'm like, holy shit, what are you going to do? And all of a sudden, bam, I decided a light went off my head. And I went, well, maybe I'll just use what I already been doing, but kind of present it differently. That would be like if you had a room full of furniture and you don't like it. You have two choices: get rid of it, start from scratch, or rearrange what you already have. I rearranged what I already had been using, and long and short of it is that became John Mellencamp's biggest number one hit single ever in his career. Basically, I made the corporation millions and millions of dollars, which meant I was now part of Team Johnny Cougar Mellencamp because he wasn't going to get rid of me now. And so, and I played with him for 17 years, 9 albums. But from that day on, every time he'd come to the studio with a new song on acoustic guitar, after he'd play it once, he'd turn around and look at me and say, what do you got, Aronoff? That was a lot of pressure. And that's where I came up with a whole method of thinking. Like it was a 4-step method where I'd go like, all right, when he's playing a song, he's going to ask me, what do you got? And I thought, okay, think of what is the most obvious beat, even if it's stupid. Start from there. Then embellish that beat. You see, you take like some clay and then you start shifting it and moving it. And then you embellish it even more. And finally, the fourth thing is just think out of the box. I mean, let's see, what would Neil Peart do with Rush? Well, obviously, his drumming style doesn't fit into this music, but maybe some of his ideas do. Maybe some weird little thing. So that became a method. And I made hits after hits after hits for John because I had understood how to be the best John Cougar Mellencamp drummer in the world.
I know you're recognized for that drum fill in
Yeah,
Jack and Diane, but you've recorded tens of thousands of
yeah,
great songs.
yeah.
Is there others that you think, man, this is so amazing? Why doesn't it get the recognition that that drum fill gets? Or are there other things that you're way more proud of that you think should
No,
it
well,
deserves?
the difference between that song and any other song, I've never had a two-measure drum solo on a top 40 radio station. Back then, there's so many charts now. You can be number one and sell like 20,000 copies. Back then, when you were number one, you were the biggest thing in the world because it was only basically the top 100 singles charts and there was the top 200 album charts. And if you were on number one on any of those, you were on every radio station, every TV station. That was the deal. And then they started breaking them into, mainstream rock, alternative rock, folk rock, black rock, white rock, this rock, that rock. I mean, it just kept breaking it up, into different factions. So there was no other song where I was featured quite like that. It set me up. I mean, I've been on, oh man, you know, I've been on, I've been on a lot of number one hit singles. And, Meatloaf, I'll do anything love, but I won't do that.
Right.
Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory. But, Belinda Carlisle, Heaven on Earth. But they didn't have big drum breaks like that.
True.
This literally set me up like, and everybody can air drum to it. It's just like Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. Those are probably the most common drum solos that everyone's waiting for them to come in, you know?
Can I ask you, when you were studying classical music seriously and really, really devoted and dedicated to classical music, did you at any point seriously consider the symphony?
Yeah, no, I did. Absolutely. That's what I was going for it. Yeah. I thought that's what you do when you get out. I mean, I wasn't dreaming about it and I wasn't like asking my teacher, where's the next auditions? But when I got out of college, my teacher hooked me up with the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. I thought, fine. But I, it wasn't like I was crazy about that, like I was about playing rock and roll. That's the thing that baffled me in my head was like, well, if you were so crazy about rock and roll, why didn't you just not go to college and just move to New York City and try to make it? Why didn't I? I don't know why.
But I would imagine the discipline that you learned from those 6 years, and also the ability to read music and the
Yeah.
ability to see music in a different light. And I don't know how much work you've done with an orchestra since then, but I presume that having that discipline and having that experience has made you a far better musician.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the only way you can do Kennedy Center honors is if you can read music like amazingly. The only reason why I could do the drummer does the Obama inauguration or the Johnny Cash tribute or the Merle Haggard tribute or the Greg Allman tribute because I can read music. You got 25 songs. Kennedy Center on. You don't even get the songs until a week before, and then I got to learn the YouTube version, the album version. Then when we get there, they change all that around. You're writing nonstop. At the end of the day, I'm in my hotel room rewriting everything. Tempos. You got Sting coming up to you saying, "Hey, would you do this? Would you do that?" You write it down. I just did Kings of Chaos. That was 20 songs. That's like, five Cheap Trick songs. There was Night Ranger songs, Damn Yankee songs. There was a Dee Snider's Twisted Sister song, Zeppelin, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses. Each one of those songs, there's a precise, exact drum part. I mean, here, I'll show you right here. Nobody else can see this, but this is what like one of my charts looks like.
Wow. So,
And I
but is the goal to sound like Guns N' Roses, or is it a
absolutely
goal to more
no,
so than to make it your own?
absolutely sound like Guns N' Roses. Unless the person who I'm playing with, like if I'm playing with Dee Snider and he wants me to play it differently, then I do it differently. But until that point, what I do is I go on like Gilby Clarke was with the Guns N' Roses, and he told me a couple of adjustments he wanted me to make. And he said, "Don't do it like the record in that solo. Do it the way we used to do it live." And so I do that. But other than that, tempos, I start with the tempo of the record. I start with the drum parts exactly the way they're on the record until somebody tells me differently.
Actually, tell me a little bit about Kings of Chaos because I didn't know much about them until like this
Yeah.
weekend.
Well, Matt Sorum started it. He was the drummer in Guns N' Roses,
Right.
and I think that spinned off from Kings of Chaos. I mean, I can't. I mean, Camp Freddy. Camp Freddy was a thing they used to do with people like Dave Navarro from Jane's Addictions, Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple, Corey Taylor from Limp Bizkit and Stone Sour, Duff McCracken and Slash from Guns N' Roses, just on and on. All these celebrity rock stars, and they would do concerts every so often in L.A. and corporate events, and they just do get a lineup of killer singers. And so Matt started his own called Kings of Chaos, and the core band is Matt Sorum, unless I'm there, and the bass players. Well, they've had rotating bass players. I think Duff might have been there at one point, but in this particular setup, we had James Lomenzo, who plays with me with John Fogerty, but he played in Megadeth. He played with David Lee Roth, and he played with Black Label Society and White Lion. He was a founding member, and and then Gilby Clarke, the guitar player from Guns N' Roses, and uh, and then Warren DeMartini from Rat. And so then we will hire, or Matt will hire singers. This particular lineup was Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick, and Jack Blades from Night Ranger or Damn Yankees. And then we did Rat songs because we had Warren DeMartini there. The idea is you play songs with that are related to the people on stage. But we do a couple covers. We did like three covers. We did Rock and Roll by Zeppelin, and we did Whole Lot of Love by Zeppelin and Come Together. Yeah, we do it pretty accurately. And that's the whole thing. So before the pandemic, I had done Kings of Chaos also. It was with Sebastian Bach. Also, it was with Dee Snider, and it was with Lou Gramm. And that might have been his last concert because he's got health issues. And there might have been somebody else. But it was great, man. I love it because I get to play all these classic rock things, but I learn them note for note because I want to get it just the way they recorded it or the way they're performing it now.
So, what's it like for you? Because I know you spent 17 years or so working with John Mellencamp's band, and you were a band member.
Yeah,
It was this group,
yeah,
and you have that discipline. And then around the ending of that time, you became a very in-demand session musician, where
yeah,
people would call you and say, "I need you as a drummer for this
yeah.
track" or whatever. What's the difference in your attitude or the way you approach things as a drummer for hire, and where you got to go in the studio, perform, and get it done right quickly, versus being in a band formation where I would presume that it's a different attitude, mindset?
Well, I thought it was until this happened. I was in the band and that was it, And of course, I did sessions every so often if it didn't get in the way. But one day, at the end of 8 years of being with John, and we were flying around in private jets, selling out arenas across America with no opening act. It was just us. 3 hour show with Mellencamp. And all of a sudden, John, at the last show of the Lonesome Jubilee tour, he said, "I'm quitting the music business for 3 years. I just gotten divorced. I just had bought a new house, had car payments, child support, all this stuff." And I went, "Oh my God, he can quit." And I'm out of work because it's really his band. And there was no, there was a retainer, but it was so little. I could make that much in one day, easily recording. And that was a month pay. And I went, "I'm never going to be in this place again." So that's why I went out and aggressively went out to become a session drummer. And I spent a year beating the pavement in LA, and eventually I broke in and I became a real recognized session drummer, and ended up playing on 300 million records sold. I had drums in Nashville, LA, New York City, Indiana, of course, where I lived, Japan and Germany, and people would fly me all over the world to make records until the budgets crashed, until record sales crashed. But up until that point, there was like people would fly me first class just for one song sometimes. And so when I saw everything change, the budgets, that's where I got my own studio in LA, and I moved to LA and moved everything here so that I could be in one place. And that's ever since. I mean, even through the pandemic, I was recording all the time. People were sending me, their music to put drums on, and I'd send it back.
So, what's the mindset when somebody says, "Kenny, can you do a drum track for this song that I wrote"? Like, what happens in your mindset, and how does that become something that you put on tape or
Well,
digital?
what I asked them, send me the song, your demo with the drum part that you have, because 95% of the time that's what they want. So send me your demo with drums, send me your demo without drums, send me the click track you used when you recorded your demo. And I'll import the click track and the music, the MP3, uh, without the drums. Or if they send me a Pro Tools file, that basically it's called a PTS file. You open it up. You just open up the whole file, everything's ready to go. And then make a chart of the song, every note. I rehearse it once or twice, and then now I can give them 3 takes. Bam, bam, bam. And the mindset is to make it sound like we all recorded together in the same room. And so, and I can, I'll do as many as 10 songs a day if I have to. But everything is charted out, and I'm ready to go. And I just go bam, 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 bam. And people, they can email me on my website, www.kennyaronoff.com. and there's a section we fill out a form, and they say, what do you charge for one song? What do you charge for two songs? What do you charge for 10 songs? And I have a whole form. I just send it back.
And do you ever? I mean, can it be anybody? Like, can I really?
Yeah, yeah, anybody.
Okay, so you were playing at a level that was like you said, number one in the world, touring on Lear jets and whatever. And you saw that side of the business. The business has changed quite a bit, but that you had experienced with Mellencamp, this level of stardom, I guess is the right word, but
Yeah,
more than that, just
yeah,
that level of celebrity or that level of success is the right
yeah,
word.
absolutely.
How do you view the record business? Because people call you and say, "I want you to be on my record," and you've experienced all that. Does
Yeah.
that inform any way of how you are today?
No, I don't mind. I mean, I recognize. Yeah, I mean, everything I do, I can't. Obviously, I'm playing music that the musicianship isn't what it. It's not all at the same level. But I love the process of recording so much, and I'm so good at it that I enjoy taking a song that's okay and making it amazing or much better. I enjoy that. I don't mind. Um, if people are not playing with the click track real well, I just turn their music way down. I ask them. I always ask, "What are you keeping?" Because if they're keeping and their stuff and they're out of time, I have to go out of time with them
Hmm.
to sound like we played together. And I prefer that they replace everything so I can be very precise and on the click. I'll hear mixes sometimes come back and it's like, whoa, they didn't. They were a little bit on top and not in the pocket. It's just the nature of the business. I love recording so much that not everything's going to be, you know, at the high. Not everything is like a sold out 20,000 seat arena
Right.
with people screaming for you. You know, it's changed so much. So I'm grateful that I have a studio and that I can do all this recording. And I did my audio book there. My book, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, is now an audio version on Amazon. I did that there. I did Access TV there with Sammy Hagar featuring Steve Lukather from Toto. I've done, Billy Gibbons in there. I've done so many people. That studio is amazing. And I did my virtual corporate speaking from there. I did 3 events live from there with cameras, lights. I have a whole setup. I spent the whole year turning it into a TV studio, and able to. So yeah, I mean, I adapt, or I'm not going to die. I adapt or die, and I adapt.
I know you're doing public speaking. What made you do that? Because it sounds like you're constantly busy, or you were,
No, I am.
um, like
I am
ridiculously. Yeah.
ridiculously.
So there's enough people calling you to do session work or asking you to go on tour, and then you say, "Well, I want to do public speaking too." How does that happen?
Well, when my book came out, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, I was getting offers to speak.
Oh, okay.
And then I met an agent, and he told me, I had a meeting with him, and he told me, this is what you need to do to be a great speaker. And I came back three years later, had invested a lot of money, created a reel. I'd learned how I created a deck and slides and a whole show. I've got 2 computers. I'm playing music. I've got a movie. I mean, I've been refining my speech and what my subject is about, and what he feels is a great marketing, what he can market me as, which is teamwork, leadership, innovation, creativity, communication skills, and staying relevant and realize your bliss and purpose in life. And so I've been doing it, and I have taken courses. Even I've had writers working. It's a business. It's to be really great. And I mean, I've been doing it now for 6 years, and I'm just getting to the point where I'm at another level. That during that whole pandemic, I worked hard and took advantage of that time. And to be speaking and to be able to give a great speech and be like this, talking like this when you don't see anybody, but just a camera, I can do that really good. I don't need the audience. And so I enjoy it.
Where does that come from?
Well, I think that, when I'm born that way. I'm a people person. I enjoy people. But I did drum clinics for 30 years
Right.
where I'd have to stand in front of people, do a 2 hour drum clinic, talking, teaching, performing. And I got good, at being in front of people. My mom said I was always good at that, even when I was in seventh grade. I can't remember what, she was a school teacher at a school I went to, and she said you were great always on stage. You just felt you seemed so natural for you.
Wow. So
So yeah,
I'm curious that you have an identical brother.
yeah, identical twin. Yep, he's a doctor, a
Um,
psychiatrist.
and are there a lot of similarities between the two of
A
you?
lot of similarities. We still, holy shit! I got a well, people won't be able to see this. Have you seen a picture of him?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Okay,
amazing.
so it's
It's
amazing.
basically you double.
Yeah. But we played sports together. We always hung out. We had played in bands together, and then we went completely different directions, and we're different in that regard. I'd say I'm a little bit wilder. He's a little bit more conservative, but basically we sound the same. We both are workaholics. We both are super competitive, super passionate. Really, we sound the same. That's what blows me away, and look the same.
Yeah, amazingly same.
Yeah,
Did you ever doubt yourself?
absolutely. Remember, I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be. I accepted that when I finally realized it was a humbling moment. But up to that, man, I was like, like any kid, you're like, you don't have enough life experience to understand that what I used to call failures and mistakes, I don't use those words anymore. There are no mistakes. There are no failures. Those are just experiences that are helping you become a better you in this life. You may not get it all worked out in this life. That's okay. Just keep trying. There are no mistakes and there are no failures. Those are just events. The reason why I don't call them that anymore, when you say failure and mistakes, it's a crushing blow to your ego and feelings. It triggers the experiences you had when your dad or mom told you that you did something bad, you disappointed them, or your teachers, or your coaches, or anybody older than you. We all were children, and so we were small, they were big. And so we would be devastated by failure because you'd see in their face that you had really disappointed them. And when you're a child, that's very heavy.
Mhm.
So you want to pivot out of that mentality and go take a deep breath and go, you know what? I'm not going to call it that, because when you call it that, you feel ill, you feel sick. It triggers those old emotions. If you say, all right, I'm going to get this. I just have to put in more time, and I have to be patient. And you know what? You're actually really good at what you're doing, but you just need more time to do it. Now, if you say it like that, you don't feel like a loser. You feel more confident. You know, positive approach on difficult situations. It's been proven that in the brain scan looks different than a negative approach to difficult situations. And I've operated in both worlds. As you're a kid, it's like, oh man, I suck. Damn. Oh shit, I suck. And I get better. But now I realize it's not as healthy. It's not healthy. They've shown, if you can see it in a brain scan, literally it's not healthy when you take the negative approach to difficult situations. Just stay in there. Practice more. Work more. Be conscious. What can you do you can do better? And it will get better. The method it's a great method.
I mean, I think you're the living proof of that. I mean, just how you
Yeah.
dealt with adversity and how you never gave up. And when I read your book, that's the thing that came across is
Yeah.
that, things
Exactly.
happen to you, but you just said, well, I don't care. I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing
The
thing to
ne-
have.
Yeah, I'd say that the difference between when I tell that story to now is I'm positive about difficult situations, or I try to be. I try not to complain. You notice I'll be like handling stuff, but then when I speak to my wife, there's the urge of talking like I used to talk when I was a kid. God damn, that's so difficult. Oh, that sucks. Oh, that's all negative stuff. And it takes a lot of work to sit there and go, don't say it, because it's natural to complain and let off steam. But the more you can avoid that, the healthier it is for you. And literally, health, they've proven it. You can add 10 years to your life, or at least quality of life.
Right.
Like somebody asked me in the interview the other day, they went, dude, it's so obvious. It's like it's almost like you've climbed Mount Everest. What now? And I went, climb it again. If you climb it again, you're going to learn something different. You go up a different way. He says, what do you do when you go into, like, peaks and valleys? What do you do when you go in a valley? I said, when I was a kid, I used to, and which wasn't that long ago, I was, I'd get like, oh no, oh. Now I go, oh yeah. Ooh, we're going to go down. Let's see. The last 2,000 times I went into a valley, I came up higher than where I was because the valley is an opportunity to learn to do things better. So now I look at the valleys. It's not fun, maybe, but I know the end game is going to be phenomenal. So it's you know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
just sit there. I'm like, I was in my studio till 1 in the morning. When I was flying back from Kings of Chaos gig, I was already learning a Ronnie James Dio song that I have to record and film tomorrow. Very specific drum parts. And I'm trying to memorize it because I don't memorize great because I read music. So then I came home that night after flying and not a lot of sleep, wrote the chart, and then I started rehearsing it on Saturday. And then yesterday I was there till 1 o'clock, over and over again, trying to memorize, trying to learn, work on. Then I recorded it. And then I listened to it. I went, no, that doesn't sound good. Then went back and rehearsed. I'm going to go back to the studio today just for one song because it's being filmed and recorded. It's got to be,
Can I ask you what song?
yeah, it's Straight Through the Heart.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very specific drum parts. It's not like, I mean, I'm adding a few of my own, but I noticed that there's a ritual to those drum parts.
Speaking of drums, at one point I got the impression that Billy Cobham was a huge influence on you.
Yeah, he was.
And you were in a kind of rock jazz fusion band before you
Yeah,
joined Mellencamp.
yeah.
When I look at discography, I don't see a lot of rock fusion unless I'm totally wrong, but I get the feeling.
No, 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 no. Yeah, because what happens when I got into Mellencamp, I realized, whoa, this is what I need to focus on. Then once I became known as a drummer in that world, I owned it. I said, okay, this is what I am.
Is there a part of you that still fantasizes the double drum, double bass drum and
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Well, I'll be doing, like I'll be doing some double bass drum on this track, and I recorded with Alice Cooper, Cinderella, Tony Iommi, and from Sabbath and Glenn Hughes, and so yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I still do it. I do it in my drum solos, double bass drum, but yeah, I just incorporate that style into my what I'm known for when I can. But yeah,
okay, and then the other
yeah,
thing you mentioned that you did an audio version of your book, which is an excellent book,
yeah.
by the way. Um,
Oh,
what did
thanks.
you learn from that experience of now going back a number of years later and reading your life story again?
It was difficult. It was very, very difficult because I had sometimes you read if your voice changes as you're reading, first of all, and I would spend. I mean, you could spend a whole day, 10 hours, and only get 15 pages.
Right.
Because what we would do is I'd read the chapter and I'd stop every line if something was right, and my engineer would say, do it again. And you'd get through the whole thing. Then I'd listen to it and go, no, you got to punch me in there. You got to punch me in there. I got to fix that. Then I'd leave the room and he'd spend 2 hours making the cadence and the pace between every line have a great flow. And then he'd clean out the noise in between every sentence. And then I'd come back in and listen to it and I'd still make some fixes. Oh man, it was the
But
longest.
I wonder about not the technical side of reading, but just about your life and reliving some of that, what you've written.
Oh, it was cool. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was great. Great memories. Yeah, I really understood who I was.
Yeah, and what made you decide to write the book initially?
Somebody talked me into it. And I was saying I don't have enough time to write a book. Oh, don't worry, it'll be easy. You just dictate stuff to me and I'll put it together. I went, oh, that's easy. But then when I saw it, I was going, that don't sound like that. So then I rewrote the whole book. Now this became the biggest pain in the ass. I'd be on tour on a day off in a Four Seasons hotel, spend 14 hours working on one little chapter. Wake up the next day and go, nope, not good enough yet. Rewrite it. Then eventually I hand it in, and I actually at one point I had the book. No, at one point I had a checkbook in my left hand, had a phone in my right hand. I'm calling up the publisher and said, "How much does it cost to buy this book back and bury it?"
Oh.
He says, "Whoa, what's going on?" I said, "This book sucks." And he said, "Slow down, partner." He says, "We're going to get an editor. The editor will fix all of this." I went, I didn't trust him. And eventually I did get with an editor. I gave him 3 chapters and oh my God, he made it amazing. I didn't know anything about writing books, and there was so much stuff he took out. And I'm like, oh my God, you took out the part where I met Dave Grohl and he just started this new band called Foo Fighters. He invited me to the showcase. Said, "Meh, you got enough stories." What about the Cameron Diaz story where she sat on my lap and put her arms around me? No. Did you have sex with her? No. I said, but I should have put that in there because the whole point was, I don't know if she would have had sex with me, but this was right at the beginning of her career. But she sat on my lap at the end of the night at 2 a.m. in a bar. You don't do that to a rock and roll drummer in a bar without the drummer hitting on you. And the point is, I didn't. I didn't even try because I was thinking, I got to record at 11 a.m. tomorrow with Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins and Tony Iommi from Sabbath. I don't want to blow it. So once again, I put work ahead of pleasure. So that should have been in the book because the whole concept of work always came first. But anyway, the editor fixed it up, and then wow, and reading the book, wow, that was I'd heard it was difficult. It was difficult. But I learned a lot because it taught me how to speak better. So it helped my speaking business. Because you might be able to say, you might go, and I went to the store. Or you go, and I went to the store. Where you really enunciate the last. Sometimes I would throw away the last 2 words. And you hear stuff back. I'd be going, and I got 5 gold records. And then you hear the playback. It's like, and I got 5 gold records. I'm like, what? It sounded way more passionate when I said it. What it sounds like in your head and what comes out on the microphone under Pro Tools, whole different thing. So I learned all kinds of techniques of presenting my book, and you'll hear me, man, when I get into the parts where I'm really belting it out hard. You got to check it out. It's almost like screaming.
Well, and everybody should check it out because it's a great book. And thank you so much for doing this. I've seen you many times with various musicians.
Oh, cool.
First of all, with Mellencamp, and I have seen you play with many different people, and it's a thrill and an honor to sit here and talk to you.
Well, thank you. Where are you based out of?
I'm actually out of Toronto, Canada.
Oh, awesome. Well, oh, yeah. I've spent a lot of time in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of time.
Yeah. So
I just been working on a record for a Triumph tribute record. I'm on 2 or 3 songs. And they're out of Toronto, Canada, I believe.
Yeah. I just did an interview with Rick Emmett, so yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's great.
You know what's great? Just the fact that you're still a huge fan of music.
Oh man, I'm massive. Dude, I'm just I got oh my God, yeah. I just did a new Joe Satriani record that's badass in my studio. I forgot to mention that. That's killer.
Wow.
We did a record that came out and it was a huge success, but then the pandemic hit, so we didn't tour on it. So Joe said, let's just do a new record. So I did one, and it's really like, wow, it's pretty crazy. Joe wants it to be shock and awe.
Well, okay, so you're with Supersonic Blues Machine. You're with Kings of Chaos.
Joe Satriani, Kings of Chaos, Joe Satriani, the Bodines, and what did I leave out? John Fogerty.
Right. So these are considered your first go-to bands?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But how do you schedule?
But then I Sammy Hagar too occasionally.
Right.
How do I schedule it? It gets very complicated, and I disappoint people. But they go like, I won't mention any names, but somebody says, Yeah, but we need you. I said, well, if you want me there all the time, you should put me on retainer. And then I'll be there all the time. So we don't do that. Exactly. You don't do that, so I have to look after myself.
Well,
You know?
and you have been keeping yourself busy. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for doing this, Kenny. It's, as
All
I
right,
said,
man.
a thrill. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care, man. Thank you.